Hello, hello. Today I want to talk to you about how you can break through the plateau that you're currently sitting at. So, this usual new format, I really like it. Just hit record and I'll start telling you what to do. No bullshit, just keeping it super simple, actionable advice as always. I was trying to get set up I'm using my webcam, which is still a decent camera, but I was trying to set up like the higher resolution one, and it was just taking too much time. That's the whole reason I started doing this easy one take, no script videos in the first place, is because it was just getting in the way of me actually recording. So anyways, how to break through your plateau. So maybe you're stuck right now, maybe you've been progressing the past years, but you kind of got to a point where you've hit a bit of a plateau, you hit a bit of a ceiling, and you don't know why. And that's especially frustrating when you continue to train hard and you're still pushing, and your motivation is still there, but I guess only so much motivation can be there when you're not seeing progression. So what I would like to do is just sort of talk through maybe an example of like when I was stuck at plateaus, some examples of when I was stuck at plateaus, and then some examples maybe of athletes that came to work with us, and how we got them through plateaus in a way that you can go away and use it. So I'll just sort of run through them off the top of my head. So say you come to me and you're saying, training's going terribly. I'm not hitting progression anymore. At the start I was, and at the start it's always pretty easy to hit progression. But right now, you're just struggling. So the first thing that comes to my head that I'd be thinking is, where are your zone? Like what are the split of your training zones? Like what does your spread of your intensities look like? Pretty much always people are going too hard on their UT2, or they're not even doing UT2 and they're just doing hard training all the time. So just a bit of a background as to like what happens when you do either UT2 too hard or you do just hard training sessions all the time. Physiologically, when you exercise, you basically, to keep it simple, you just put your body under a lot of stress. And of course, this stress on this level is good because you recover, you come back stronger. But it takes time for your body to recover from this stress. And this is not like a debate. This is literal like scientific fact. Like physiologists, biomedical people, I don't know the name, people that know what goes on inside your body, doctors, I don't know. They'll all agree that when you do high intensity exercise, it takes a minimum of 48 hours to recover from that. So, doing high intensity is hard. Doing high intensity absolutely is good for you and makes you fitter and faster. When you do high intensity more frequently than every 48 hours, and even then I'd say that's pushing it a little bit, especially when you have a job, when you have a busy, demanding schedule, recovery becomes so much harder. If you do that more frequently than every 48 hours, you're just, every time, so you come in like that, or whatever, this is your level, this is your energy, this is where your recovery is at. You do a really hard 3x2K or 30x20 or whatever, you drop down. And after 48 hours, say you come back up and you're back where you started again. When you come back, when you do the session, go down and you try and come back up, you're not going to come back up as high, and then you go down even lower and you just sort of downward spiral like that. My old coach used to say that when you do, sorry, I'm just playing around with the camera lens here of the camera that I didn't set up. When you do high intensity all the time, because you're not recovering from it, eventually, the quality of your high intensity is going to be so low that you're doing more or less UT2 anyways. So what I'm trying to say is make sure that you don't train hard 48 hours after you do high intensity. Make sure that what you do between those efforts is nothing but low intensity or weights training. So pretty simple. How do you make sure that it's low enough? There's so many ways. I've done so many videos on YouTube, on Instagram, but let's go over it again. The simplest way is you can do RPE, rate of perceived exertion, 2 to 4 out of 10. So it should feel like, you keep going for another hour when you finish. You should never feel like you're hanging on towards the end. You can use heart rate, 65 to 72% of your max heart rate as an average. For masters rowers, as you age, that won't become as relevant, and you're probably better off looking towards percentage of your 2K or your 5K watts or RPE. Your max, as you age, your max heart rate goes down, but your lower heart rate stays. It still goes down as well, but not at the same rate. But yeah, it's very rare that someone's came on and we've said, you're doing your UT2 too slow, you need to speed up. So that's important to know as well. There's a very, very low minimum threshold you need to be working at to get benefit from low intensity, and pushing above that doesn't give you any more benefit. The analogy I like to use, if this makes sense, so just bear with me, it's a bit abstract, but if you think about, with UT2, there's two approaches. You can have it as low as it needs to be and nice and chilled, and you get the same benefit. And you can have it as hard as you want it when you push on your splits, and you'll get the same benefit, but it's far higher risk. So if you think about it, like you've got two factories, and there's two conveyor belts, and the workers are working along the conveyor belt, and the conveyor belt can only go at one speed. And think of that as the amount of benefit that you get from doing that session. In one factory, you've got the dickhead boss who's screaming at them, telling them to hurry up, creating a toxic environment. And then you've got the other factory, which is just super chilled, like the thing's going as quickly as it can. There's no need to rush. So they're both producing the same thing, but one's just creating a lot more stress than's needed. So that's what you can think about with UT2 as well. But yeah, so that's the biggest one. The next one is probably just not planning people's training loads with their work. So you need to, if you're getting tired and then backing off with your training, that's a sign that you don't have your training balance right. It's like being hydrated. You don't want to wait until you're thirsty to have a drink. You want to make sure that you're staying on top of it. So with training, you don't want to wait until, oh shit, I'm really tired today, I need to back off. You kind of want to be timing that rest with when you need it. So that you sort of wake up on a rest day or a rest week, and you're like, oh right, I feel the fatigue, but we've already planned for it, and that's just a sign that you're getting your recovery right. Work stress, deadlines, travel, especially changing time zone, all of this needs to be accounted for. You need to work in your training around that. So we've got one athlete, for example, right now. We know what their calendar looks like. There's a lot of holidays and there's a lot of work trips for the next 8 weeks. We know we're kind of pushing when we can, and we're fitting that in during the week, and they have travel on the weekends. And we kind of know right now, okay, we're going to need to push through some fatigue, but we know towards the end of this block that you'll be able to recover and recuperate, and you'll still be getting the benefit, and you'll still be getting that continual progression. But to simplify this, without looking at all that nuanced stuff, the easiest way is to have recovery weeks. So do 2 or 3 weeks where you push volume hard, you push intensity hard, or you push weights hard, and 1 week where you drop that down. And again, plan it, don't wait until you're tired, but that's probably a big area. But yeah, what else? Probably just not doing. The biggest reason people will, it's partially tied in with those past two reasons, which is like going too hard and not planning recovery. It's just not training consistently. Like those two other areas are causing fatigue or injury or illness to stop you from training consistently. So train consistently. That's the friggin' hard part. My friends used to ask me about like what training I did, and I'd be like, oh, we did, what did you do all day or something like that. I'd be like an hour and a half of rowing, then some weights, and then maybe 45 minutes, another 60 minutes of rowing or running or cross training or something. I'm like, oh, all day? That's not that bad. And I'd be like, yeah, it's easy to do it for one day. You could do the hardest training program for one day. The real hard thing is doing that consistently. And yeah, a big part of that is mindset and motivation and discipline and accountability. But equally, I think it's important to have your program fit for you, so that you can do it consistently for months and months and months and years. That's where you get that long-term progression. But yeah, where else could we look? If it's in the boat, technique's a huge one. Technique was the one thing that really kept me making steps on. And I say this not to be cocky, but I feel like at one point I did feel like, what else can I do? I felt like there wasn't any other areas I could improve on, but looking to other areas, always challenging your narrative, being open-minded to get improvements. You can always find speed. There's always room for improvement. The big thing as well, the erg. So many people neglect working on technique on the erg. Now, I'm not against going on your phone and setting up a Netflix movie, but when it distracts you from your session and what you're doing, you need to treat these opportunities as an opportunity to improve. And no, you're never going to be able to 100% focus throughout a session, every stroke, but you really have to have a kind of sense of urgency with your technique. And oh, maybe I've got a race coming up in 2 weeks. Oh, maybe it's not the best time to break down my stroke. It's like, no, you need to do it now. You need to make this change, this stroke now. And don't throw, I know we're just kind of this time of year, I don't know when you're going to be watching this obviously, but it's March. How many strokes have you wasted just by letting your mind drift when you could have really been focusing on what to improve, and just having a clear objective, a clear focus, broken down into a simple movement as well, that you can find these little margins. You just start to accumulate these marginal gains on the rowing machine, and you're going to be continuing to get better. So that's another big one. Another technical tip as well. This is kind of tangent. One of our athletes, she was trying to row perfectly and make a change. One thing that really helped them make the change was viewing themselves in the moment, not as a rower, but so in this example, it was simply squaring the blades earlier. So we said, you're not a rower for the rest of the session, you're an early blade squarer. So when we try and get the early blade squaring right with the while rowing well, you're always going to prioritize the rowing well and making it feel good. And then by doing that, when you square early, it's always going to feel shit when you try and, not always, but it's often going to feel shit when you make a change. It's going to feel more clunky, more deliberate. You're going to clip the water more. You might become a bit more unstable, might lose connection. Doesn't friggin' matter. It's about making the change that's longer term going to help you progress. And I think so many people get stuck to make a change because they're like, oh, but then I try that and then it makes the boat feel shit. It's like, that doesn't matter. Well, I mean, it does matter when you're racing, but in a training session, what matters is what are you doing? What's the objective? Are you making the change? Does it feel, if it doesn't feel different, then you're not changing anything. And different, it doesn't just have to be good different, it can be bad different as well. When I was training, if I had 3 shit sessions in a row, I always knew that fourth one was going to be a good one every time. So anyways, as you get better at this stuff, as you train consistently, as you figure out what your training zones are, as you get your recovery right, as you're improving your technique, the next level to that is really starting to get dialed in on where your weaknesses are with your physiology and targeting those. Sorry, I just had my bagels, so I'm burping. too much information. Sorry. Longer term, you need to start leveling up the way that you attack your physiology. So the simple approach is, how good are you at sprinting? How good are you at endurance? What's your 1K, your max power, your 1K, your 2K, your 5K, your longer stuff? What does that look like? Where's the spread? And then around that, try and do sessions that target those weak areas. Now, caveat here, and this is going to be annoying because it's kind of confusing. Sometimes just because you're better at sprinting doesn't mean you need to work at endurance work. Sometimes because when you're good at sprinting, what you respond well to is sprinting, and that's what will keep you progressing, that work on that high end. To identify if that's the case, do sprint work, see how you respond in training after 4 weeks. So that involves tracking your data, and then you'll have an idea of if that's working or not. But broadly speaking here, you will progress if you work on your weak areas. And that also just breaks up your training a bit, gives you a bit of variety, gives you a bit of focus, so that, yeah, it just keeps it a bit more interesting as well, there's something to be said for that. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today, folks. Let me know. Again, I'm just starting off with these raw videos. So easy for me to just hit record and start blathering. So more than happy. I kind of took this video again from some suggestions that we had in the YouTube comments. So comment down below what sort of stuff you want to see next. Saw the channel recently cross 1K subscribers, so that's cool. If you like this content and you want to say thanks, drop a like. That'll let me know that obviously you like it. Or if it's shit and it didn't make any sense, drop a dislike and unsubscribe. Yeah, okay, right, bye everybody.